Unanswered questions about Michael f***ing Myers.
Number 1. What the hell is this? I know this video is starting off strong, but this is the stupidest thing I've seen in a long fucking time. During the introduction of Halloween H20, you see a lot of newspaper clippings on the wall. Now me being a horror junkie that I am, I like to pause and read some of these, just to maybe get some insights about what happened. But then I saw this. Michael Myers, criminally insane killer, now 21, is reported missing from Warren County Sanitarium. Yeah, we knew that. But right here, Myers has been observed doing complicated dance movements that bespeak the Del Sarte system of kinesiological so what and so forth. Again, as always, we're not breaking the fourth wall here. We can't blame this on bad production, fucked up writing, or continuity errors. So Mr. Jonathan Stack right here is claiming that Michael Myers has been observed doing complicated dance moves. I just thought this was wow. I never thought in a million years I'd see Michael Myers hitting the gritty on somebody. I'm just like, fuck. But on the bright side of this, we do actually get some pretty cool context about how Michael escaped that night. Myers escaped by climbing out of a second-story window. He had fashioned a homemade rope out of stolen bed sheets. Basically, Michael Myers pulled a die-hard Bruce Willis and got the hell out of Dodge. It all makes sense now. Because I've always wondered, hey, did Michael kill the guards? Did he attack anybody? How did he end up outside? And according to this, he just tied a whole bunch of bed sheets together, made him a rope, and Peter Parkered his way down. Nice. Number 2. Oh, by the way, let's just ignore that they completely missed the date right here. But whatever. Number 2. Is this paramedic Michael Myers? Now I'm jumping ahead a little bit because I would rather nip this in the butt now rather than going to Resurrection and jumping back to this movie. Because Resurrection already has a tons of questions, but that's jumping ahead. Is this paramedic Michael Myers? If you view this clip here, this paramedic in the background really has the same exact stature of Michael Myers. And also notice the blonde hair. During the flashback sequences, where it shows Michael Myers wearing that exact outfit, we can also see that he has, guess what? Blonde hair. And plus the way Lori looks over her shoulder, almost a sense as if Michael's there, he might have been. And I don't mean the guy laying on the gurney, I mean her brother sitting right there hiding in plain sight. Now here's some photos for comparison. It might be a reach, but damn do the stars line up perfectly. So what do you say, chat? Was that Michael all along? Or am I just a fucking idiot? Number 3! Did Michael Myers have a killing streak we never knew about? Now since this film does retcon the Thorn trilogy, which is another question later, anything beyond Halloween 1 and Halloween 2, beyond 1978, Michael's body was never found.
Hey, you don't think Michael Myers...
I never found his body.
Yeah, that was like 20 years ago.
What has Michael been up to for the past 20 years? Now there's only 2 explanations for this. Number 1 is that Loomis has been tracking Michael's activity. And you can see some of that here upon these newspaper clippings, victim photos, and pins on the wall. Now there's a whole bunch around Iowa. The second explanation about this is that this was not Michael. One of these newspaper clippings gives some pretty good insights about Dr. Loomis, stating that Michael isn't the only mass murderer or murderer that he's dealt with. So is this Michael's rampage that we never knew about in a new timeline? Or is this somebody else? I like to believe that this is Michael, not only for hopeful wishing, but it wouldn't make sense for this to be in the Michael Myers lore, surrounded by everything else about Michael in the backstory, if this wasn't about Michael. So is it that for the past 20 years, Michael has been busy? Now that's some new material I would love to watch.
Number 4.
Does H20 actually retcon the Thorn trilogy? Now hear me out. In a perfect universe, yes, the movie would retcon the Thorn trilogy. It wouldn't make any sense for Laurie Strode to abandon her daughter, to run off in this fake life, have another son, and try to ride off into the sunset. However, what's really interesting about this movie is, for one, the photo they used for Dr. Loomis is a promotional still from Halloween 6. Not only that, when we first see Michael Myers for the first time in this movie ever, he's wearing the Halloween 6 mask. And guys, once again, this is just for fun. If we don't break this fourth wall and say, oh, it's a production error, a continuity error, a fucked up writing, laziness, that isn't allowed here. If we was in this universe, how will we explain this? This applies to every question I'm asking, including this one. So you have the Loomis photo, you got the Myers mask, but you also have a really big nod to part 5 with the scissors kill, when Michael butchered my favorite final girl of the franchise, Rachel, And who's to say when that detective said they never found his body that he's talking about 1978? What if he's talking about 1989, when Jamie and Michael were presumed dead? Who's to say these victims on Loomis's wall isn't a result of the aftermath of Halloween 6? Because either way you look at it, Michael went off scot-free. In the theatrical cut, Loomis got attacked. We don't know what happened from there. In the producer's cut, Michael walked away a free man, no longer under the control of the cult. He was down to do whatever. Who's to say this wasn't just an old grudge? What if Michael is a completionist? As far as the Jamie storyline, the facts still line up. She died in a car crash in both instances. What if Lori faked her death, left the daughter there because Jamie Lloyd is under a different name? Maybe she thought Jamie was there to really sell the lie. Because why would Michael assume that this Jamie Lloyd has anything to do with the Strodes? And just to reiterate what I'm saying, I'm not trying to back the theory that the Thorne timeline is canon. I'm just saying throughout this film, there are Thorne aspects to this. Like, you can't not ignore this. It's there. It's factual. I shot him 6 times! This is a two-part question. Did Dr. Loomis know about Lori faking her death? And if so, why in the world would he keep files about it? Now, I'm not going to get into the whole spiel about the big, heavy questions everybody already asked. It doesn't have a definitive answer. None of these have definitive answers. But did Loomis know? And if he did, the second part of my question is, after all this is done, we're at the end of the movie now. Lori succeeds in killing Michael. If she illegally faked her death, would she go to prison? I think that's a minimum of 7 years, because that's a felony. That might have changed, but back in the day, it used to be 7 years. Or was she in witness protection? But still, that's kind of odd. Marion or Dr. Loomis wouldn't have access to those files. Those would be FBI confidential kind of things. But again, that kind of blends into the whole, how did Michael find Marion? How did Michael find Dr. Loomis's files? I'm not getting into all that. It is what it is. But my main questions are, did Loomis know? And will Lori be held accountable? What happened to John and Molly? Unfortunately, we have to deal with the sequel that comes after this.
Oh my God!
But it's kind of odd that John and Molly are never mentioned again. Is it safe to say that they went into hiding? Are they in witness protection? Because there is no concrete evidence that Michael Myers killed any of these people in Halloween H20. They would assume that it's some paramedic that went crazy, right? Because they don't have a body. If so, if they knew that Michael was on the loose, then Resurrection has a big plot problem, more than it already does. So essentially, right now in the timeline, after this movie, Michael still hasn't been seen or heard from since he escaped the burning hospital in 1978. Because again, there's no concrete evidence this was ever Michael. So did John and Molly fall into Lori's footsteps, go into hiding for safety? Makes you wonder. There is definitely more of a story to be told with John. It wouldn't surprise me if Molly dipped after this. She's like, you know what? Your fucking family's a nutcase. I'm not dealing with this shit. I love you, but I'm gone. You know what I'm saying? John's gonna be all heartbroken and shit. You know how it is. Hey, yo, why does nobody reference Halloween 2? Only Halloween 1. Now, the only reason we know this movie's connected to Halloween 2 is because of the newspaper clippings in the introduction, where it shows Lori being strolled out of the hospital. So we know Halloween 2 is canon. But anytime Lori's telling the backstory, anytime they're talking about it with each other, they never mention the events at the hospital. They only mention the events that happened in Halloween 1. I try to rationalize with myself that maybe because everybody burnt up in the hospital, that maybe they assumed it wasn't Michael. But that can't be the case because Dr. Loomis survived. He was there. He's a witness. Laurie Strode is a witness. And not to downplay the murders that happened in Haddonfield, but I think people would be a lot more inclined to remember a burning hospital massacre that claimed over 10 lives versus the 3 or 4 or 5 that happened regular in Haddonfield, in the neighborhood. But at least they do acknowledge that it did happen throughout the newspapers. But they never tell it in the urban legend. They never tell it in conversation. The teenagers never talk about it. Lori never talks about it. Why, chat? Why? Number 9. Who is John's dad? Now, I know this question will never be answered, but it's pretty interesting that we're missing a piece of the puzzle here to this film. John is very aware of who his father is. And based on our conversation, we can tell that he's not the greatest person in the world. He's probably a pillhead, a drunk, whatever. The bad juju, you know?
Dad would let me go.
Well, Dad is an abusive, chain-smoking methadone addict.
Who would attract someone like that?
Is I wonder if John's dad knows the truth about Lori. How she's not Carrie's head at all. But if he did know the truth, well, that spices up the situation, doesn't it? I mean, John's dad loves him enough to send him birthday cards, even if they're 2 or 3 months late. At least he gets the shit done. I'm not trying to defend the guy, but there is some sort of relationship there, even though it might be sour. And by the looks of it, that it's Lori's choice that her and John have nothing to do with the father. Is it important to the story? I guess not. But it would be kind of cool just to have it all come full circle. I always thought it would be a very interesting angle for them to use about the dad, about the father, that Michael uses him to get information about where they are. If you work that in somehow. That would explain how Michael knows everything. Not breaking into Dr. Loomis's house after he died to access some files that may or may not show her faking her death and her current whereabouts. But if you find the dad's gonna know. That makes more sense in my eyes. But even if you go that route, how did Michael know who he was? Since we don't even know who he was. Guys, I'm telling you, they should have used the dad angle. It just makes sense. Work the dad into the angle a little bit. That's how Michael found the information. They find his dead body somewhere. We get a little bit more backstory. Nothing too fleshed out, but just a little bit. Because if he knew the truth, that's saying something. And if he didn't know the truth, that's also saying something. There's too much material there not to play with, but unfortunately we never got that. So who is this mysterious man that may or may not know the truth about the whole situation? Who may or may not know that Michael Myers was out there stalking his wife? Who may or may not know that one day Michael Myers may have came back for him and his son John? Or was he actually that fucking oblivious to the situation and that makes it so much worse? Bro, why?